Hello, everyone. I'm Janet Catraccia, the Chief Impact Officer at the Community Foundation of Tompkins County, and I'd like to welcome you all to our Resilient Communities 2021 Fall Grant Cycle Information Session. If there's pressing questions as I go through this, feel free to throw a hand up or and ask as this is an informal environment. We want to bring folks up to speed. And there'll also be some time afterward to ask questions and hopefully do a little socializing while we're all on the call, because it's really wonderful to see these many familiar faces, some new faces. There's certainly been changes within our organizations, and we haven't had the same sort of opportunities out in the community to get to know each other. If after this info session you have some additional questions, would like to set up some individual time with me to explore, please do that. I'll share my email and contact information later on. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, is everybody seeing? Now I can't see you, but I'm assuming everybody can see.
Yes, it looks great, Janet.
Wonderful.
That little munchkin with the book. I love it.
Yes. Yeah, I've got some great new photos on here from recent activities, which is exciting. And I also just want to do a shout out. So George Ferrari, our CEO, is here on the call with us, as well as Jesse Galbuth-Nocera, our administrative coordinator, and also our tech expert when it comes to our grants management software. We're all here to answer questions that you may have. So yeah, love these beautiful photos of some recent activities in our community. Today, I'm going to give an overview of our fall grant cycle, but it's going to be a shorter info session than in the spring. In the spring, of course, we were coming off of a COVID response, grant cycle that we'd been running throughout the previous year. We were and I spent some time reflecting on 2020 and some of our COVID-related grants. I'm not going to review that again today, but know that the spring info session is still up on our grants opportunities page. So you're welcome to go back to that if you'd like to see some of our historical information from the past year and a half. One of the exciting things that's happened here at the Community Foundation is, like so many of your own organizations, this has been a time of reflection and planning. Our board had an extremely engaged process earlier this year of launching our new strategic plan. And as part of that, we also revisited our mission. And I'm really happy to say that we have a newly stated mission that realigns, the work we've been doing, and it's been several years since we've done this. So we strive to bring people and resources together to build a more equitable Tompkins County by inspiring diverse philanthropy, catalyzing collaborations, and championing inclusion and justice. And you'll see evidence of these things throughout this grant cycle. We also have identified these 6 value areas also you'll see reflected in the grant cycle and other work that we're engaged in. We have always had an emphasis around social justice, but last year really started diving deeper into articulating the data around that, and hopefully modeling that for our organizations as well, to inspire you to find ways to better articulate that. This slide reflects data dive from the past 3 years through December of 2020. We are in the process of updating this now for our 2021 grants, and you'll see that on our website in the near future. And we're defining social justice for the purposes of this slide through these 4 lenses: racial justice, rural services, advocacy, and resource equity. By far, resource equity is the predominant area of our grant making, but you'll continue to see us wrestle with how we are articulating our impact in these areas. And so these are iterative processes and tools that we are using. And you'll find that, as I said, this information on our website, as well as other racial justice resources. So You can go to our website and click on resources on the top and see this racial justice resources on the side. And this is a process, this is a resource for our entire community. And also we invite you to give us updated information. If you see this being outdated in any way, share your links with us and provide those resources to each other. And we encourage you to have good communication with us around these issues.
Janet, just so you know, as best as I can, I'm putting links in the chat. So take a look as you mentioned us. That's how we roll here.
Awesome. Thank you. We also have, we have 3 primary grant cycles right now. We are always in an iterative process with our grant cycles. Our library grant cycle happens every year. This is only for the 33 libraries in the Finger Lakes Library System that was carried out and completed this past spring. That happens every year. We carried out our Resilient Communities Spring Grant Cycle in this past spring with new guidelines. And at that time, we committed to mirror those guidelines for the fall grant cycle. And you'll see a lot of, this will be very familiar to many of you from our spring grant cycle today. So the big news about 2021 grant cycles is that we shifted our grant cycle priorities from program grants to general operating grants. Historically, our grant cycles have been program focused. You're still welcome and encouraged to talk about your many programs, but we really want to be responsive to give you flexible funding so that you can rapidly assess and adjust, continue to rapidly assess and adjust your services in this continuation of uncertain times. So the emphasis of this grant cycle is on supporting and strengthening your capacity to carry out your mission effectively and to be articulating your mission effectively and aligning your programs to your mission effectively. And we really want to decrease your focus on, hey, what will get funded, and really more on what do you need to achieve your goals related to your important missions in Tompkins County. The grant request range for this grant cycle is $500 to $10,000. We clearly cannot provide the maximum funding for all Tompkins County nonprofits, but we do a great job of magnifying philanthropy. So we have a pool of approximately $200,000 in funds available from our discretionary funds and our field of interest funds, but we also play a really strong matchmaking role. So we will share summaries of your application with the over 135 donor advised funds within the Community Foundation. And in the spring, the success in that matchmaking was unprecedented. We saw an additional $150,000 come in from our donor advised funds in response to applications that came in from your requests. So we sit right at that cross section of a lot of movement with many, many funds. We are not, I do not make the decisions about what gets funded, but there are many community voices that play a role in making those decisions, and many donor advised funds that exercise their interests in that way. So as I was mentioning, all of our applications are reviewed by community represented review teams. We are transitioning. We had 60 applications in the spring. That was more applications than we've had in the 14 years that I have been in this role. So we are, rather than having one review team, we are dividing up into multiple review teams, and hopefully in response to that, we'll give you some more in-depth feedback on your particular applications too. So we convene diverse review teams, some of which know our community very well, some of which are very new to our community, some who have been traditional decision makers in our community, some whose voice has not played the role of traditional decision maker in our community. And this is an opportunity for them to find and gain voice and agency around social investments. So so we're piloting a little bit of a new model this fall, which I'm very excited about. And I really think as applicant organizations, you'll all find that there's benefits to that as well. So we really want to be in conversation with you. We don't want it to be one way. We don't want you to just get a decline letter or an award letter and not know what goes behind that, but we really want to give you some quantitative and qualitative feedback to help you improve your services and to help you understand how review team members might have perceived your application and how we can all learn together. And that's what we're here to do. I prefer one application per organization. Sometimes with organizations that provide fiscal sponsorship, that can get a little bit more complex. So if your organization anticipates more than one application, you need to talk to me first and make sure we're clear on what the process is for that. So one application per organization. And note too that because we've done this grant cycle in the spring, we are going this fall to have some preference to fund organizations that didn't receive their full funding in the spring. So a lot of organizations did not apply in the spring. They were in a bit of time of flux given the pandemic, and they were waiting for the fall. So there's new applicant organizations. So if you want to talk to me about that, feel free to do that. But just to know that, because they're limited dollars and we want to support the broad range from emerging issues to the longstanding issues in our community. I mentioned earlier that there are many funds at the Community Foundation. Some of those funds have specific issue areas that they are focused on. And to help us do some matchmaking with those funds, we will ask in the application for you to indicate whether your request prioritizes any of the following areas. It doesn't mean that this application is limited to these areas. It's just asking if they have a priority in any of those areas. And then if they have a priority in none of those areas, there should also be a box to click that says none of those areas. And that's just fine. So I don't want applicants to feel as though they have to, we call that pretzeling, when you're trying to pretzel into a particular area. We really just are doing some basic matchmaking here. The content of the application is a little bit broader. It's similar to our spring grant cycle, but broader than prior years for those of you who have applied to the Community Foundation for funding before. So general themes around your organization's mission. We really want to see evidence that your mission is clear, that you're clear on what your goals are. How is your organization delivering on its mission? What have been your challenges this past year? What have been some of your successes this past year? What are you most proud of? What did you learn that was maybe unexpected? And what do you need most in the next 12 months to accomplish your mission? So some of that forward thinking and planning. As I mentioned, tell us about the changing needs of your organization. And if you want to focus in on particular program areas at this point, you're welcome to do that, because sometimes talking about your programs is what illustrates the impact of how you're carrying out your mission. I mentioned what you're most proud of. How are you setting goals and tracking your progress in meeting those goals? And tell us, and for those of you who are new to the Community Foundation, we have a strong emphasis on collaboration. We have many nonprofits in Tompkins County. That to me is a sign of the beauty, the success, and passionate commitment of so many in our community. But it also requires efficiency and strong collaboration across organizations to help organizations develop mutually reinforcing activities toward those common goals. And we have worked hard in recent years toward a more collective impact, to foster a more collective impact approach. And I think we saw incredible evidence of that last year as many of our food serving organizations mobilized rapidly after years of developing trusting relationships with each other in really amazing ways toward food distribution would be one example of that. So we really are looking for, and of course, we're in different environments. We're not running into each other in the same way. So the virtual world really requires some intentionality around those collaborations. And we're curious how you're engaged in that. We want you to tell us about how your organization's capacity has been affected by COVID-19. More than a year ago, that might have had to do with furloughs and layoffs and some rapid downsizing. Funding has opened up in some ways, different kinds of fundings. Different organizations have been affected very differently by this current environment. Perhaps now you have some vacancies, or maybe you're still dealing with furloughs. So every organization has its own story. We want to know your organization's story. We also have the addition of, in all of our grant cycles, of a diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice questions. Part of this is to help us understand what's happening across organizations in our community. Is to help you take information back to your boards and your staff and assure that you're diving into these important issues. So for example, we asked a couple of questions in the spring. We're building on those questions now and have three questions here that are going to be asked in the application. Has your organization modified any of its programs or services to meet DEIJ goals explicitly, and to tell us about those? What partners you have or might you engage in this work? So maybe you're already doing this or you have plans to do so, and what resources you need to help you make your DEIJ work more effective. And that's helpful to us. We are part of a collective of local funders. Talk to each other, and we can be strategic in how to provide more services to your organization and organizations. And so that's a great opportunity for us to learn. The application content will also have, some of this will be very familiar to all of you, but we'll be asking about your overall actuals and budgets, 2020, your last fiscal year, your current fiscal year, and your plans for next year. And please give us some budget narrative if this tells a story about maybe some overall changes that happened through the pandemic year, whether or not coming out of the pandemic next year, do you plan to be, how does that compare to maybe pre-pandemic? So, so giving us a little bit of a long view of some of the financial planning related to your organization. And you are welcome. These are spreadsheets. They're flexible documents. We're not trying to pin you into a restrictive reporting here, but you can add line items. You can offer some clarification in the notes. That all helps tell that broader story of your organization. So this is related to revenue. You'll see on that same sheet, this is something you'll be able to download from the application, complete, and then upload again. Your organizational expenses. And oops, I'm going backward here. If you're a new applicant, if you have had changing staffing to who needs to access applications, and you want to see the history of your organization's applications, contact Jessie Galbraith-Nocera at admin, and her email will come up here shortly, admin@cftompkins.org. And she can change the name of an email of who's affiliated with the history of your applications. There's a lot of flexibility with that. So so there should be easy solutions to gaining that access. So if you're new to this process, you can set up you can access our applications by going to our website. This is at cftompkins.org, and then looking over here to grant opportunities, which you've probably all been to that page recently. The application should have been made active today. If you're seeing any egregious issues with it as you get into it, please let Jessie know right away so we can get on getting those repaired quickly. Then you want to scroll down. Oops, this is supposed to say fall. So then you want to scroll down to the 2021 fall grant cycle and click on Community Force. Community Force is our grants management software, and where you'll be filling out your application. If you are new to this process, like I said, you can create a new account, but if you suspect that there's a predecessor or somebody who is affiliated with the organization who has left that has a history there, that's when you want to reach out to Jesse, and you can gain access to some of that history right on the platform. And then you'll come to your dashboard, and this is where you'll be navigating your application process. It's a pretty flexible website. If you do have issues with it, we'd love to know right away so we can address those. Don't be shy about helping us improve our services to you. And as I mentioned, if you have technical questions related to the platform, you can reach out to Jesse at admin@CF-Tompkins. And if you have content related questions, you can contact me. And here's my email as well. Another thing I just want to do a quick shout out to. So last year, I guess we started doing these. We started doing a Let's Talk series. This is a monthly series where we focus on a broad range of issues. They're 30 minutes. Very similar to the format you're in right now, where we have a guest speaker come in and talk for about half the time, and then we field questions from you all. And it's just been a wonderfully successful gathering of interested community members and nonprofits representation to learn and share about a particular issue. If there's issues that you're involved with that you'd love to see us focus on, please let us know, make a recommendation. We'd be happy to explore that with you. George I can't see it, but I'm just guessing he's putting a Let's Talk link somewhere in the chat about now. And
yes, I did.
And know that our next Let's Talk is scheduled for September 28th. It's always at noon, Tuesdays at noon. And they are recorded. So you can go to that resource page that George just shared and see a recording of a whole host of issues that we've focused on in the past. Our next one is going to feature Simone Gatson and Brett Irish that are 211 housing specialists to talk about housing rental resources for landlords and tenants as we move into yet more unfamiliar territory in our community. So thank you for that whirlwind of information and enduring that. And I am curious, are there questions that folks have right away? Or maybe something's come up in the chat. And George, if you've seen any and you can let me know, that'd be great.
I've been looking at the chat and I don't see it. You're happy to raise your hand virtually or visually and unmute yourself and ask a question. I don't know, Janet, whether you mentioned the specific deadline of this application.
October 13th. It's great. I don't know that I did either. I think it was just written on the slide. October 13th at 5 p.m. You will, as part of your application, need to get the approval signature of your executive director as well as a board officer. Know that as long as you have on the platform requested their signature, that constitutes a complete application to be able to be submitted by 5 p.m. And then they'll have an additional 48 hours to respond to those requests for electronic signature. So I just don't get caught up in sort of waiting, feeling like you need to have those signatures in order to submit it. You just have to have it requested in order to submit it. And I expect that the turnaround for notification on the grants to be by the middle of November. I am going to turn the recording off and give people a little bit of downtime to ask any additional questions. But I want to thank everybody for being here. And again, just really do a shout out to all of you for the really amazing work you've been doing in such challenging environments for so many months now. And those needs continue to change. And I just want to thank you for your commitment to your missions, to the residents of our community, and to improving the quality of life for all of us through these trying times. So thank you for that.